Hello, everyone, and welcome to the freshest episode of Present Perfect podcast. And today with me, I have Nicholas, who is entrepreneur helping individuals and companies improving the memory, individual and collective memory. Nicholas, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Well, thank you for inviting me to this podcast today. I'm excited to talk to you for the next bit of time.
Thank you, Nicholas. Actually, first question: how do you choose a path of working on the memory? How did it come to your mind that now I want to help people with their memory?
It's a fair question. So, I'm a trained psychologist. I also was in research for a while before I actually moved a bit more in the applied field. I was working in the corporate world for quite a bit, also abroad. And I realized often that when people are presenting, when they're in social interaction, how relevant it is and key to convince someone that you can actually draw from memory, that you have the right arguments ready, the points that you want to make, that they come through. And particularly in the social setting, it's actually critical that you're not just relying on, let's say, external help, but then also saw how good some people were at this. And that was not, just to be clear. and and I think this is one of the key things, and the key insight you can learn. You can learn to get better. And I started that journey by also testing it on myself. How to get better at remembering names, how to get better at remembering things more efficiently. And this is sort of became more and more fascinating to me, that I wanted to build a little bit of my own project and company around it, but also how can I help others also having this very same experience that I had as well. So that it's not just for individuals, but also like how we can make that information flow, but not just for myself better or for the individual, but how can you improve that also as part of a team that also exchange knowledge, information.
Excellent. And with this, actually, you covered one of my first questions. Is there such a thing as bad memory? In the sense that you just have a bad memory and you can do nothing about it? Or as you were already saying, some people do have a memory that they are not happy with, and they can improve it. So what actually were your steps to improve your memory?
Well, I started also to think of what kind of daily exercises I can do. Do want to elaborate just a little bit before I explain a bit more my own journey. The critical thing is that people often start that are claiming that to have a bad memory is that they're stuck in this kind of fixed mindset. Is I'm just not good at it. And there is a great researcher that helps basically how to get out of this kind of mindset by adding just this very little simple word yet at the end of the sentence. So that should help you towards that trajectory of this learning journey. I'm not that good at it yet. And this is when you start to get into this growth mindset.
I really love this part because quite often I see that people are claiming they either have a bad memory or not even about memory, but about anything. And if they just add yet, then that means that they are working towards improving the situation.
But maybe just to add one more thing, like when you talk about bad memories, there are other influence factors as well. So I not want to just claim, oh yeah, you just didn't try enough. You should try. So for example, one thing that is often very much underrated, underestimated is also sleep. So sometimes check first some of those external factors. They sometimes are within your control. Sometimes they're not. When you're having kids or not, maybe it's a bit less in your control, but often it is still.
Talking about the influence of sleep on quality of your memory, is it the number of hours that you sleep? So that you would say probably minimum 7 hours, non-interrupted, or it's also about other parameters of sleep, like how long was your deep sleep or something else?
Yeah, so that part is actually quite crucial. I think it's also quite individual. I think we're often giving people some sort of average number of hours as an advice, just so people have an orientation. Well, I understand why people are giving this suggestion, because this is also coming back from research, but not having a particular goal is much more challenging than for you to improve. So rather set something, even if it might not be your perfect number and it might not perfectly match you, but it motivates you. And I think that's why I said rather have that number rather than a complicated personal plan.
What about the influence of stress or anxiety on memory? It happened to me once that, I'm using my credit card daily, every single day. So every single day, I also put the same password in the system. But one day, I just forgot it, and that was the moment that shocked me. That how can my memory fail me so much in this critical moment on something that I do daily as a routine?
Yeah, I understand. When stress comes into play, I think it starts to shake some things up, even routines. So first thing is, of course, don't expect under stress to be able to recall something that you have not done repetitively, intensively. Yes, you mentioned that this is something that you're doing all over again, but on top of that, think of it that this is also what I typically teach in the workshop. Numbers in particular, this is one of those abstract information. They're much harder to grasp. You cannot just visualize the number. Maybe you visualize the sequence that you're putting it in, but as soon as you have a different display to enter it, you're lost. If you would need to just write it down, like, wait, I need to sort of go follow through the movements, because that's what you actually remember much better. Your prefrontal cortex is constantly in a working mode, and then I can do a stress test with you, and then I'm asking something that you should know. Suddenly, everything shuts down. So this is a normal behavior. It's also, in a way, a protection mechanism. So,
what could I have done in that situation?
So what I do actually, particularly with these critical numbers, what I do is I turn numbers into images, and then create with these images stories. And we can remember stories so much better than just numbers, right? This is how we use to pass information from one person to the other. We told stories, right? And there are techniques. How can you make that story more enriching, more memorable, more spicy, that your brain really absorbs it?
Okay, let's actually make an example.
Don't tell me your password, though.
No, not password. So what day is today? Today is 14th of November. How can I remember 14th of November? So 1411.
Right. So I start with the more simple system, which is that you have one picture for each of the numbers ready. You have to put some effort into it at the beginning. So let's say I have my fixed image for number 1 is a candle. You can, with some imagination, maybe you see the outlay of a number 1 when you look at the candle. So for number 4, my picture would be a car, because there are 4 wheels.
So funny how for different people it would be different, because for me 1 would be a snake and 4 would be a square.
Yeah, I think I like the snake very much. I think the square, if you have something very concrete in mind, it helps. So if you can say it's, instead of a square, maybe it's this cube that we're sitting in right now. So you have a very clear image of what it helps
Something
as well.
like...
So now combine these two pictures into an image, right? So you have, for example, in my case, or in your case, you had the snake and the square. Maybe you see now this snake, maybe you're even scared. You can add into the story some emotion. You're feeling that, right? Maybe you're hearing even the sound the snake is making about the podcast. So it's not just having a story. I need to link it to the information I want to remember it as well.
Yeah, we need to link it to the fact that 14th November we were shooting the podcast.
Exactly. So you want to then have something that you relate with me as a person to bake that into that story, right? The important thing is that you always use the same picture if that are your pictures.
Would you say the more emotion we put into the story, the better we will remember?
Absolutely. I also talked about maybe you're afraid of snake, maybe you're not. but I also put in some motion itself, so we can, rather than just static pictures. I try to add some kind of other sensory experience, like, oh, you hear the snake, maybe. You can also add more. And the more you are basically visualizing that way, the better is the recall afterwards.
But what about the faces? How do I remember the face? Because it also happened to me a couple of times that people were coming to me saying hi as if they know me and they knew me, but I could not remember them. I could not remember the face or the name. And that was such an awkward moment. I really want to do something about it.
What I often tell people, start to practice in a way of a safe environment. So you don't feel, again, like I'm not stuck in this fixed mindset. So how can you try it? So what is a safe setting? When I prepare for a workshop and I have a list of participants, maybe I get the list in advance. What do? Well, I typically go on LinkedIn. There I have a profile picture, most cases, right? And I have a name. So I can at least already take advantage is that I might recognize that face again. At least it helps me that I see it already.
If the profile picture was kind of fresh and the people still look
Of course,
more or less the same.
Of course. But then it helps me already by reading the name. If someone introduces themselves, then afterwards, at least it's not the first time I'm hearing it. So I can, or this is what I typically say, you have different stages where you can improve. And this is the preparation phase, right? So I can prepare myself for that encounter. So the very same concept I mentioned with the numbers can be applied to names as well, right? So how do you create a picture out of a name? Again, this is all your imagination. You can be very creative. You can learn and train that as well. So I can just try to train in the safe environment, for example, LinkedIn. How do I get better at names? And just look at the picture. Can I recall the name? There are a lot of techniques by linking that name that you have heard already to a person you already know, seeing them side to side, maybe seeing a celebrity. When I heard your name, I used to watch many years ago a certain show which had a very similar
Xenia the Warrior.
Exactly. So like maybe I see you holding a sword or fighting, something like that. Like I can make it funny. And that helps a lot. When you're out of that preparation phase, drop that name a few times. This sounds so simple, but particularly when you're speaking in English, it's actually quite common that I say your name, Xenia, a few times during the conversation. What do you think about that, Xenia? And so on. But every time I speak out the name itself, I process it more than just rehearse it in my head. So this is another very simple trick. Say the name out loud. Repeat it. Make it to a goal. Tonight, every person at this gathering, I will recall every name I hear in the conversation 3 times.
That's actually also gonna probably have additional benefit of people liking it when you say their name.
Absolutely. I think it sort of, even if it's, let's say, most people value when you recall their name, right? Even if it's nothing personal that you forget it, right? They say, "Oh, you paid attention to me." So you can really just try it first in a safer setting, recall the names, or sometimes I just do a list of people I've spoken to today, so I can recall them. Or sometimes I make it as a exercise when I go grocery shopping in a Migros or a Coop here, this local supermarket. People often have a name tag, right? So it's a safe environment. I can look at their name. I can try to come up with a picture and then see what I can recall it again later tonight when I maybe just go through who did I meet today. You mentioned another key. I think it's also a training to be attentive, right? So particularly when you're in a conversation, I have many points that I wanted really to tell you. I already have my next answer in mind, but you haven't asked the question. At that moment, I stop paying attention to what you're actually saying. And it might be actually your name, or it might be another important information. So this is really important that you sort of shut down, quiet down that inner puppy that wants to already rush ahead and really pay attention. And I can only do that if I'm confident that I can recall that other information without just rehearsing it constantly while you're actually talking, right?
Absolutely, yes.
I also don't automatically start to memorize everything. I use techniques and also still forget. It's not that I have, because of that, a perfect memory. Not at all. But I think you can be smarter and more efficient about it and how you'll recall that. Next time I set my goal 60% that I will actually memorize and so on. And you will actually be more relaxed. And by being more relaxed, you actually will start again to have better recall information too, along with techniques.
Is there also a correlation between memorizing things and putting them down in writing with the hand or typing?
There are a lot of studies that are comparing, for example, typing with writing. When you're typing, of course, you are able to write down so much more information. But what you're actually doing is much more like transcribing. You already have to process information. So when you write them down, it's already went through a loop. When you're just typing, I can just hear and actually don't process the information. So this is one benefit of writing them down. You will remember them better. What do you do after that encounter with information?
Because it's all about recollecting it. Recall and recall.
You can also be smart how often, when. So I can repeat something 3 times on the same day. It has not the same effect if I would do more of a spaced retrieval, where I say, okay, I space it out over a couple of days. Depends again very much on what is your goal. Is that key information? Is that critical information? Is that just good to know for later?
So the more important it is, the better it is that I space it through and repeat it more times.
Yes, for most of the case.
Happens to me so often that I'm reading a book. I'm usually actually still purchasing, the physical book, papers, and I have a marker and I'm actually underlining things that I want to remember. But then I, finish the book, close it. After a while, I do not remember. Even if I was marking it down, of course, I was not writing it down with my hand and then recalling it and again. But is there a technique that can make it easier?
Yes, there is. Actually, there is one thing that it's also simple. The hard thing is to form the routine. The simple thing that you can do, it's called the testing effect, is as soon as you close the book or maybe you stop to listen to the podcast, test yourself. What did I just listen to? What did I just read? By asking this question, improves already your memorization a lot. It's called the primacy effect and the recency effect. So we can also make use of that by really having strategic breaks in between those reading sessions, because then we have again these anchors like, oh, what was just before that break? What was just after that break? And you just ask yourself, what did I just read? You can go further from there, but this one question, this can be a goal that you're setting into your daily routine today, and you write it in your learning journal. I try to ask myself this question 5 times. When I read an article, listen to a podcast, read a book.
What would you say is like a ballpark figure for when it's better to take a strategic break? After how many minutes?
Again, this is somewhat individual. There is something called the Pomodoro technique, which maybe you have heard about, that says maybe roughly 25 minutes and then you take a 5-minute break and so on. I think as critical it is to say how long you are focused is what you actually do in those breaks, right? Now I need to check my phone and answer all those messages that I haven't been answering for the whole day. Then your brain is still working. I mentioned this prefrontal cortex. You're still in on high cognitive load, right?
Nicholas, the worst part for me is when I actually read a message and I know I need to reply to it, but I know that the reply right now would take too much time and effort, and then I kind of keep it open, the tab open. I need to reply to this message, and then I don't. And that is maybe the heaviest part.
Yeah,
for these
I
breaks.
totally understand. For example, these classical studies, like how much of your attention goes away just by having your phone nearby. And they had three scenarios. One was having the phone on your table, having the phone in your backpack, and third one was having the phone in another room.
Mhm.
And as you can picture, the performance on certain classical memory task is worse if the phone is near to you, regardless of whether it was turned on or turned off. We
Give
always
yourself a realistic goal.
Yes, no, I think we're always getting back to this mindset. If you're setting an expectation that's outside of this growth zone, it becomes unrealistic. Then you're in this. You can go into, some people call it panic zone, but then you're not achieving anything at all because
Mm.
you're set the bar too high. You're frustrated. You feel, yeah, see, I already told you that I'm not good at it, and you will just feel yourself being confirmed.
And that actually reminds me of how most of the people, I guess, set up the New Year resolutions.
Mm.
And they set it up, I guess, without really imagining and thinking how would the journey be in reality. So they are imagining themselves, let's say, very fit because they plan to go to the gym 3 times a week, but they do not imagine how they have to say no to the social occasions because
Mm-hmm.
they actually will spend this time in the gym or doing some sports, or how they will, put on their shoes and the gym attire when it is cold and dark outside.
Yeah, it does definitely rings a bell and resonates, and I think it's maybe also a bit key to set these smaller goals and then to slowly get to there. Maybe you don't have this goal for an entire year. Maybe you're just taking, okay, this is my goal for January and not just for the whole year. Start by checking whether you sleep enough, whether you're moving, are you doing enough physical exercise?
Is there a preferred sport or preferred type of movement, cardio versus strength or agility, that has more impact on memory?
If you want to learn a new dance, that is something that helps you because you have to memorize again certain steps, a process. So I think like, or if you start playing a new instrument where you have to move your fingers, I think this is actually what trains your brain, not just your memory per se, right? Workout per se is important, that it helps you to for the blood flow to circulate, that your brain is really getting all the enough oxygen and so on. So I think these are, if you're just sitting around and doing nothing, for sure it impacts your memorization ability.
No, we were mentioning before the art of recollection, and I was thinking nowadays in most of the meetings that I took on Zoom or on Google Meet, there is always this AI tool, the note taker, that is taking the notes and then transcribing and then sending the summary of the conversation, maybe also the to-do list. How do you think it is going to impact our memories individually and also collectively?
I think it's very important what is the goal that you're setting yourself, or the context. Is it important that you're able again to recollect all that information on short notice? Or is it good enough to know where it is located? So there has been studies in, I think around 2015, don't quote me on that, where the whole Google effect was becoming very popular as a terminology. So people were in those studies were not as good at recalling information when they basically know they couldn't look it up, or they were, if they know information is saved somewhere. It was also referring to digital amnesia. There is also findings that shows the benefit of that, because you know where to look up information. It can also be a cognitive offload, which helps you in subsequent tasks to pay attention on constant cognitive load to memorize also the earlier information. So this delegation sometimes can also have benefit for you. So
because it frees up the mental space.
exactly.
But now I guess we would slowly move from this Google effect to ChatGPT effect, because then you don't even need to think where is information, you already know it's just in ChatGPT.
I think it must be said that we don't have yet any long-term study, right, that are looking at these effects. For sure, where it is more critical is I feel that maybe younger people are being trained also still in critical thinking. I feel like this is something that maybe we still had in school. I don't want to fight these windmill fights where you have probably AI is here to stay.
Definitely.
So you have to deal with that, right? So how do you to make use of that while still training yourself? Take those digital shortcuts, make use of AI. Just find also that time that you are balancing that out as well, that you are investing in your cognitive abilities as well.
How are you yourself balancing it out? I guess you also use ChatGPT and all the AIs all the time because it's efficient.
Absolutely, I do for sure. And I use it where I think it makes sense. But I'm trying often to make a more conscious decision whether I train what I call my first brain, this is my biological brain, whether it is something I delegate to my digital brain, my second brain, because it's something I want to remember for later, or whether this is something I actually want to share with others. This is I work with someone together, and this is sort of this collective information, and this is what I refer to as the third brain.
Could you tell a bit more about the third brain? Because I don't think many people have previously grasped the concept of three different brains.
Sure. So I think this is not a official term, but I refer it to as a third brain. Some people have heard about the second brain. This is this digital brain that you maintain where you have your notes, you have your to read list or movies that you want to watch. This is all goes into your second brain. But imagine if you are working together in an organization with a team. Now, how wonderful would it be if you can actually also tap into some of that knowledge or experience others have? You're not you're not giving away all your secrets by sharing, but you can make collaboration much more efficiently. You're also doing this matchmaking platform
I do.
for
For speakers and
speakers.
event organizers.
Exactly. So think of it in step before that platform, you had probably to ask around to whom should I speak if I want to get a speaker about X, and it took you quite some time.
Exactly.
And now think of it as a similar matchmaking platform, but like for the companies as well. Like, I have a new project. Who do I need to have on board? If I don't know what your expertise are, I will not be able to get there directly. Either I will never find you, or I might, but with a lot of effort.
Or maybe I worked there before. I stopped working a while ago and I still
Exactly.
contain that knowledge.
Exactly. So that goal of that third brain is how to make that rich knowledge and experience people are collecting and over the years working at an organization available to others. How can you make that very simple, that process? Because we have the means to do so with technology. And we're back at AI. So how can we transcribe and extract that relevant information, making it again available to others? But for that, you first need to see where are people at sharing information. Maybe there is let's say not there is no incentive for sharing information with each other. So you need to know, why is that the case?
One of the reasons why I think I personally would hesitate to share something, for example, the notes of a meeting, is that if I feel that I said something not wrong, but I was not sure about something and I still said it, something, maybe a bit of imposter syndrome things that would prevent me, or, nowadays people always say that you never know how things that you say would be interpreted.
For sure, giving consent about sharing or not sharing is one point, but sometimes people might not be even asking you, right?
in the context of corporate environment, it's actually very good that you have worked in a corporate environment yourself for many years, because then you really understand how it is, and also maybe a little bit of the, let's say, political games that are happening inevitably. How would you say nowadays we should or we could facilitate the third brain, so the better exchange of information between people within the same company?
There is also something called transactive memory system, which is really about this collective memory. It's a fancy term for who knows what. Then you might see that some teams are really good at that, whereas others are not. So it's then up to that diagnosis to understand why is that happening? Why are they sharing? Having worked in the corporate world, it's all about having some metrics that you can track and monitor.
Absolutely, KPIs.
Exactly, KPIs. So how can you turn that not sharing or yes sharing into a KPI that you can track? You can also clearly put some costs or benefits behind that.
Let's say you're talking to someone who works in a corporate and they are not sure why they should be sharing some information with the others. I mean, when it is a big, let's say, strategic meeting, of course, everyone needs to know about the strategy. But many people still operate on the need-to-know basis, what they see as a need-to-know basis. What would be your argument against it? So how would you not try to change the mind, but if somebody's asking you for the other arguments about it?
I think it's there probably goes back a bit more for me into the, let's say, the organizational culture as well, or the business culture, that you need probably to make sure that people are pursuing a common goal. If they have each their own goal, they might withhold that information, or they might not commit to that goal.
Let's say I'm working in a corporate, and I want to enhance this third brain between just, let's say, within my team. If I just take the notes, let's say with AI note taker at every meeting, and share it, let's say, in a common folder, is that sufficient?
I think it's a start, but I don't think this is the knowledge that you're really after. I think the critical knowledge that people have that you want to make sure is available to others, this is the experiential knowledge. This is not typically what you would discuss in a regular meeting. So you need some kind of a bit of a guidance, or maybe a semi-structured interview that particularly asks about these topics. This is also what I try to do with companies, that I help them to guide with interviews, extracting this critical information. And then you can eventually draw these knowledge maps and landscapes.
So would you say it would really enhance it if people had the interviews? I'm not saying about exit interviews when they want to leave the company or retire, but let's say just out of a regular process, that they would be interviewed by someone.
Yes, I think that goes in that direction. And I think we can even do better, instead of having for everything a one-to-one interview. That again takes time. When do I have the time? I think we can now do what I would refer to as self-paced interview. So it's, you take those questions whenever you have time, you just answer that, or make it a habit for yourself at the end of the day, for yourself.
They always say that nowadays, when you have access to ChatGPT and other AIs, the value of knowledge itself is very low, because just the factual information or some knowledge that typically people were able to monetize, now they cannot monetize any longer. So if you incorporate that idea into the third brain, would you say then the emphasis needs to be on something that is, I don't know, emotional intelligence or personal view, something that is not really about knowledge?
To some extent, yes. I think what you were mentioning, like, this is what I call the explicit knowledge, those facts. And this is not what you're necessarily after with the third brain, as you said. it's really about this not documented knowledge that you cannot look up. You refer to it as implicit knowledge. And this is the experience that you describe.
Actually, Nicholas, looking into the future, I'm not saying much remote future, but let's say in the next 3 to 5 years, how do you think the corporate environment or the labor market would change?
Ooh, you were asking a big question.
I know, but this is something that's on my mind all the time lately.
This AI trend is not a buzzword, but it's just like it's normal becoming, and it will, for many use cases, it becomes the new normal. You will suddenly realize where you might need again people, right? Because now you can create something you couldn't before. So I think there is also after, this is not just trying to be optimistic. I know that this is right now, it's critical. We hear so many layoffs. I'm sure, again, whenever technology is introduced, it takes some time, it creates some waves, and it takes a while until that settles down, until you might have learned something new, how to use it and how to be part of it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks again for having me.